Robby, what's on your radar today?
Well, Brianna, Michael Shellenberger released more Twitter files yesterday, and these also centered on the site's very infamous decision to suppress the New York Post Hunter Biden laptop story. The most interesting disclosure this time around was that the FBI actually paid Twitter $3.4 million to process the agency's requests. So, in fact, Twitter's official terms of service have a guidance for law enforcement section, which makes clear that Twitter may seek financial recompense if asked to complete burdensome tasks for the government. So anyone who thinks about this for more than a few seconds can easily understand some perverse incentives at play. The government pesters Twitter about suppressing content it doesn't like. Twitter puts in extra work in order to take care of those requests. And then it bills the FBI, and the FBI pays Twitter, by which I mean you pay Twitter, since all federal government money is actually confiscated from the hardworking taxpayers of this wonderful country. That seems bad, doesn't it? The government is taking our money, using it to bribe big tech into censoring us? Certainly feels First Amendment violating-ish to me. Elsewhere in these latest Twitter files, Shellenberger reveals that Twitter content moderators were frequently unenthusiastic about the information they were getting from the FBI. So in one such instance, an FBI agent emailed Twitter's head of moderation, Yoel Roth, about alleged foreign-controlled bots impersonating progressive activists. The FBI's source was a news story by Ben Collins of NBC News, one of the most relentlessly partisan Democratic reporters in the mainstream media. But when the FBI flagged the story for Twitter's Yoel Roth, Roth responded like this. He said, we haven't actually seen any evidence to support that claim. Our review thus far shows a small-scale domestic troll effort that was amplified in some creative ways by real people, but not a significant bot or foreign angle. So the mainstream media insisted that some bad behavior on Twitter was due to Russian bots. Then the FBI immediately jumped into action and asked Twitter to do something about it. Twitter looked at it and said the FBI and the mainstream media were wrong. And that happened over and over again. So I've said this before, but too many people who are critical, rightly critical to be clear, of the censorship that has occurred on social media over the past few years, put the blame squarely on big tech itself. But what we're seeing in so many of these disclosures is that big government, the deep state, the blob, whatever you want to call it, works side by side with the mainstream media to weaken big tech's resolve to allow free speech on the platform. Now, that shouldn't absolve people like Roth of blame entirely, but we have to grapple with the incredible influence campaign waged by wholly unaccountable bureaucrats in law enforcement and national security, and we have to grapple with the mainstream media's complicity in this shell game. Russia, Russia, Russia. Since 2016, the mainstream media has continuously reinforced that that's why Trump won. Foreign social media malfeasance and disinformation. And they routinely implied that if social media companies did not do more to cleanse their platforms, they would be complicit in a second Trump term. Meanwhile, the FBI kept up pressure on social media companies. In this incredible dispatch from the Twitter files, Twitter executives circulated an internal memo lamenting that the FBI had made clear it was displeased with Twitter's, quote, lower level of compliance relative to other platforms. An executive wrote, I get the feeling that they being the FBI, are genuinely baffled and frustrated that their rate of success, as they say, is so low at Twitter. That memo was dated August 25th, 2020, just a few weeks before the Hunter Biden laptop story was published. Maybe Twitter felt pressured to up its compliance rate? Now, keep in mind, much of what the FBI was asking Twitter to do was nonsense. Time and time again, the agency flagged entirely harmless content. That was made clear last Friday during a previous Twitter Files update. As Matt Taibbi made clear, the FBI frequently recommended that content moderators look into specific tweets and take action against them if they violated misinformation policies. But many of these tweets were from users with very low follower counts who'd engaged in satire or humor. The FBI flagged user Claire Foster, for instance, who had tweeted, I'm a ballot counter in my state. If you're not wearing a mask, I'm not counting your vote. Hashtag safety first. She also tweeted, for every negative comment on this post, I'm adding another vote for the Democrats. Okay, these comments probably sound like satire to most people. The FBI apparently thinks election integrity is no laughing matter. So you'd be forgiven for wondering whether top law enforcement officials have anything better to do with their time than police jokes on Twitter. The extent to which big government has pressured big tech, working in tandem with the mainstream media, to crack down on dissent, contrarianism, and even humor is frankly disturbing. No truly free society should tolerate this level of surveillance by faceless, humorless G-men. So that was what was from the latest Twitter files. And look, I think it's pretty alarming. And I get maybe some on the right are talking about this being the greatest, most revealing disclosure of all time. And it's true, we knew some of this, so we should keep it in perspective. But what I'm getting from the other side is like, oh, nothing to see here. Oh, we already knew all of this. I don't get it all. This is a remarkable level of communication between the FBI and a social media company. It's remarkable. It's constant. It's frequent. The kinds of content they ask them to take down are often harmless, absolutely harmless content that they have no business saying anything about. And in that one memo where Twitter's talking to itself, the executives talking to Twitter saying, yeah, they're not happy with us. They say we don't comply as much as other platforms. You can see how that can become a kind of soft pressure.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So first of all, none of this is surprising to me as a leftist, because I've been observing the way that liberals have been characterizing every tweet that they don't like as Russian bots and Russian information, every tweet that's critical of the Democratic Party in that vein, since Bernie was accused of being a Russian asset for winning Nevada, right? This is a tale as old as time. Moreover, I think that a really interesting piece of this, which I would like to hear focused on more by conservatives, is how much of this is pressure from the deep state, pressure from the FBI, such that just installing a new head at Twitter without dealing with those kinds of pressures isn't actually going to change things. And so that it doesn't
100%.
absolve of responsibility, but Elon Musk can't be expected to miraculously overcome the FBI, just like Jack can't be expected. Like, there's been a lot of focus on individual figures at Twitter, and I'm not saying that, like you said, it's not that Yoel is a hero or anything like that. But if you really want to get to the root of where a lot of this corruption is, we have to do more than just kind of keep rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic.
Absolutely, because you can see how even someone who is somewhat committed to having a free and open platform, as I frankly think a lot of these people were on paper, but when push comes to shove, the sheer volume of requests you're getting from these people weakens your resolve over time. And then every time someone like Ben Collins writes a story in a mainstream media outlet about how there are Russian bots everywhere and this is why, Biden can't have his cake and eat it too, every time they write that story, the FBI sends an email the second it's published to Yoel Roth or someone else saying, did you see this? What are you doing about this?
Right. And is anybody sending emails about K-Hive hordes?
Right. No, right.
Is anybody sending emails about the NAFO, Nazi account trolls that come into your mentions anytime you say anything critical of Ukraine foreign policy?
And to be clear, this was Trump's FBI.
Yeah.
He did nothing to rein any of this in. This shit, I really, the love affair with his criticism of the deep state, fine. But he didn't do anything. It was all talk. There needs to be fundamental reform of this law enforcement agency and other law enforcement agencies. Narrow their scope to be actually focused on actual terrorism and violence and not policing what people say online. And that is absolutely something a political figure, a Republican or any political figure should do once installed. Trump, absolutely, he should not get another chance to do that. He screwed it up, even though he thinks they were coming for him, and he didn't do anything about it.
I think when I did a radar a couple of months ago about the defund the FBI movement, as it were, that was emerging at the time, there was some statistic that said I think 85% of all FBI activity was like nonsense, like hating on, liberal lefty kind of groups and things like that. Only 15% was dedicated to, going after terrorists and Nazis and things like that. So look, you'll get no argument from me about how to be.
And even some of that is like inducing the Proud Boys to commit crimes so they can arrest them.
Gretchen Whitmer's and all of these things that ended up happening. I did want to ask you about this one interesting point about the funding aspect of it, though. As a former lawyer, there's a part of me that says, when you're asked to do all of this extra work, you bill by the hour, you're compensated for it. It's not fair for Twitter to have to basically, if they're actually directed in a way that they can't refuse by the government to do certain review protocols, why shouldn't they be compensated for it? But I also see your conflict of interest point. Can you think of a way, is there a way to manage that kind of a conflict of interest?
I don't really begrudge Twitter for trying to collect, because, this is man hours, and they're supposed to have the kindness of their heart satisfy these FBI requests. So I'm just pointing out that it can create a perverse incentive to then be fine with doing what they're asking you to do because you're going to collect money.
Sure.
That was more my issue with it. And I thought it was interesting. I had no idea
this is fascinating. This is a great report. The Twitter files keep revealing some pretty interesting stuff, and I look forward to future disclosures. Thank you, Robby.
Thank you.
More rising for you right after this.